Good morning, dear students. In previous chapters, we have discussed about the basic units of life. Clear? Now, today we are going to discuss about the cell. Clear? Cell, the unit of life. Now, let me remind you about the chapter number 5 we have studied in class 9, the fundamental unit of life. In that only we have studied about this cell. What is the cell? Cell is the basic unit of life. Now why it is called as the basic unit of life? Because whatever the living organisms we see around us, they are all made up of cell. Okay? Now before giving the introduction of this chapter, you might be knowing about the cell. Who discovered the cell? Now in this chapter also we are going to deal about the detail. In detail we are going to study about the cell. What is cell? What is cell theory? Who proposed the cell theory? The types of cells, that is prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell, and the different components of cell we are going to study. Actually this chapter is the expansion of chapter number 5 of class 9. Before moving through this chapter, you must be knowing about the class 9 chapter number 5, the fundamental unit of life. Okay? So let us start with what is cell. Cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Who discovered the cell? Yes, Robert Hooke in 1665 he discovered the cell. But it was a dead cell. Dead cell from a cork tissue. Cork tissue से उन्होंने discover किया था cell. It was actually a dead cell. The first living cell was discovered or was observed by Leeuwenhoek. He prepared his own microscope, simple microscope he prepared, and he observed the first cell. It was the bacterial cell. Clear? In 1674, he observed the living cell, first living cell he observed. After that, the cell theory was proposed. Cell theory was proposed by Sheldon and Swan. Clear? They proposed the cell theory. The cell theory was then extended by Virchow. Then the types of cell were discovered depending upon the type of nucleus they are consisting, that is prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and the different components of the cell. This is actually a very vast topic, different components of cell. Now we have studied about the different portions of cell. Cell basically consisting of three parts, that is cell membrane, cytoplasm and the nucleus. Apart from that, there are so many different components in a cell, whether it is a prokaryotic or eukaryotic. What are these components? We are going to study about them in detail in the presentation. Start with the presentation. That is cell as a basic unit of life. Now in this section we are going to study about the milestones in discovery of cell, the cell theory, cell number and size, types of cell, that is prokaryotic, bacteria, blue-green algae, animal cell eukaryotic cell we are going to study. The archaebacteria, the mesokaryotic cell, eukaryotic cells, different cell organelles we are going to study, the microbodies we are going to study, the cytoskeleton, flagella, nucleus we are going to study in this particular chapter. Okay. The cell is the smallest unit of matter. We already know about that. The cell is the smallest unit having all the properties of life. All organisms are composed of structural and functional unit of life. We call it as a cell. The body of some organisms like bacteria, protozoans, some single cell algae are made up of a single cell. We call them as a unicellular organisms. While some are the multicellular like plant, animals, fungi, these are the multicellular organisms. The cells vary in size and structure and shape of them, and they perform the different functions. Clear? The basic components of the cell are common to all. We call them as the plasma membrane, the nucleus and the cell membrane. Plasma membrane, nucleus and the cytoplasm, these are common to all, but there are certain differences amongst the different types of cells. What are these? We are going to study in this section. Okay. The milestones in discovery of cell. How the cell was discovered? Who discovered the cell? We have studied about this in lower classes. that the Robert Hooke in 1665 he discovered the cell from the thin slide of the cork cells he has discovered. Actually, these were the these were the dead cells. Clear? He observed the compartments. See, these are the irregular shape. The compartments he observed from the self-prepared microscope. Self-prepared microscope he used to observe the cells of the cork. Clear? Now, but these cells were the dead one. Clear? Still, the discovery of the cell goes to the name of Robert Hooke. Clear? But after that, Antony van Leeuwenhoek he observed the bacterial cell for the first time. The first living cell he observed. Now, but although the cell, the different structures, functions, everything of the cell was observed later on, but still the Robert Hooke is called as the father of cytology. Cytology is the branch of science which deals with the study of cell. He has honored as the father of cytology because he observed the cell for the first time, although it was the dead cell. After that, in 1672, Antony van Leeuwenhoek he observed the bacterial cell for the first time. He again used the self-prepared microscope. Clear? After that, he also observed the sperm cell, the red blood corpuscles, and many other types of cell he observed. Clear? Now, these are some milestones in the discovery of cell. Apart from that, there are certain other scientists who observed the different components of the cell. Likewise, Robert Brown in 1831, he observed the centrally placed spherical body. He called it as a nucleus. क्लियर? न्यूक्लियस की डिस्कवरी का जो कंट्रीब्यूशन है वो जाता है रॉबर्ट ब्राउन इन 1831. सिमिलरली द पुरकिंजे ही ऑब्जर्व्ड द प्रोटोप्लाज्म फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम. क्लियर? नाउ व्हाट इज सेल? The definition of cell. We are studying this cell from the lower classes only. The cell is the structural and functional unit of life or the living organism enclosing a bit of protoplasm consisting of numerous micro and macro organic and inorganic molecules dissolved or suspended in a colloidal or watery matrix. We call it as a cytoplasm. The molecules are they are involved in many types of reactions and they release or uptake the energy. The protoplasm of the cell is limited to the membrane. Membrane के अंदर का जो कंटेंट होता है उसको बोला जाता है protoplasm. All types of the cell include three major components, that is cell membrane, or we call it as a plasma membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. Now this nucleus is varying in different organisms. Like in prokaryotes, it is composed of only naked DNA. The DNA is located in the central, a mass of DNA is located. We call it as a nucleolus. Like it is seen in some bacteria, archaebacteria, and some lower prokaryotes it is seen. But it is covered with a membrane in other organisms like in eukaryotes. In eukaryotes, the nucleus is covered with the membrane. We call it as a nuclear membrane. Clear? The mature plant cells have their cytoplasm, large vacuoles containing non-living inclusions like crystals and pigments also. The bacteria have neither organelles nor well-formed nucleus. That's why they are called as the prokaryotes. Clear? The cell theory. The cell theory was jointly proposed or put forward by Sheldon and Swan in 1838-39 in their paper The Microscopic Investigations on the Similarity of Structure and Growth in Animals and Plants. Their postulates were like this: all organisms are composed of one or more cells. Cells are the basic living units within organisms and the chemical reactions of the life. They take place in the cell. All cells arise from the pre-existing cells by division and are not formed de novo, or they are not formed themselves. They are formed from the pre-existing cells. In 1855, it was modified by Virchow and observed under the microscope the cell dividing. He he reasoned that all cells come from the other pre-existing cells by the cell division. He firstly observed that cell division. See, the third picture of the Rudolf Virchow is given over here. He observed the dividing cell for the first time, and he then proposed that the cells are not arising themselves, they are arising from the pre-existing cells. Clear? The Haeckel in 1866 established the nucleus stories and transmission of hereditary traits. The cell theory was modified accordingly and was renamed as cell doctrine or the cell principle. See, Ernest Haeckel is here. The modern cell theory includes the following features. Now, these 3 points already we know about that. The modern cell theory proposes some other points, like cell is the fundamental unit of life, the structural and functional unit of living organisms. The new cells arise from the pre-existing cells through divisions. All new cells contain the same amount and degree of genetic information as contained in the parent cell. Of course, we already know about that. We have studied heredity and evolution in previous classes. The energy flow occurs within the cell. The cell contains the hereditary information, that is DNA, which is passed from cell to cell during the cell division. All cells are basically the same in chemical composition in organisms of similar species, of course. The modern cell theory includes the following features like other features like all known living or living things are made up of one or more cells. Some organisms are made up of only one cell, are known as unicellular organisms. All the life begins as a cell, of course. The others are multicellular and composed of many cells. The activity of an organism depends upon the activity of an organism depends upon the total activity of the independent cell, of course. Depending upon the specific requirements, the cell are modified. For example, elongated in muscles, nerves, loss of nucleus in RBCs, or cytoplasm in other skin cells. Clear? Now, here is the number and shape of cell. We already know the unicellular and multicellular organisms. They are having the different number of cells, and the cells are combining to form tissues form organs form organ system forms the organism. Whether it is a plant, animal, fungi, or whether any multicellular organism it is. Clear? They are all made up of basically cells. Clear? The number of cell varies from organisms to organisms. Size also varies from organisms to organisms. Shape also varies from the one organisms to another organism. Clear? See, you can see the enormous number and enormous shapes of cells over here. Clear? These are some living organisms which are consisting of different cells. The types of cells, of course, basically they are divided into two types, that is prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Clear? The third type also we have proposed by Dodge in 1966, that mesokaryotic cell, which can be placed in between prokaryotic and eukaryotic. What are these mesokaryotic cell? We are going to study in next section. Clear? The prokaryotic cell, we already know about that. This is a primitive type of nucleus which is not bound by the nuclear membrane. They do not have the true nucleus. They are called as the nucleoid. इसको बोला जाता है nucleoid. These are no membrane bound cell organelles. The plasma membrane is only present and it functions as it. The nuclear material lies diffused in the central part of the cell. The genetic material consists of DNA, but it is not associated with the protein, that is histones. The prokaryotic cells are generally smaller than the eukaryotes. We already know about the bacterial cell. It is much smaller than the plant and the animal cell. Clear? The bacterial cell, archaea or archaebacteria, blue-green algae, mycoplasma, these are all included under the prokaryotic cell. The eukaryotic cell, it is a type of, we can say the modified cell. They are consisting of the true nucleus. Eu means true and karyon means nucleus. Eukaryotic cell they are having. These are the type of cell In this type of cell organization, they have the definite or true nucleus surrounded by the definite nuclear membrane. The genetic material consists of a DNA complexed with the histone proteins to form the well-developed chromatin structure or the chromosomes. Clear? Nucleus has the nucleolus also. These are different type. There are different membrane-bound cell organelles also there. We are going to study about them in detail. This type of cells are in general larger and more organized than the prokaryotic one. Plant, animals, these are all consisted of this. These are all consisted of the eukaryotic cell. The third type of the cell, that is a mesokaryotic cell. In some organisms like in dinoflagellates, the genetic material is surrounded by the nuclear membrane, the eukaryotic character, but the histone protein is not associated with DNA, that is prokaryotic character. Meso का meaning होता है middle. They are present between the prokaryotic as well as eukaryotic. They are showing the characteristic properties of both prokaryotes as well as eukaryotes. The nucleus is larger in size and has been named as the mesokaryon by Dodge. This type of the cells, which are intermediate between prokaryotes and eukaryotes, are called as the mesokaryotic cell. In this type of cells, the mitotic spindles is not formed. The cells of certain algae like Gymnodinium and Peridinium, these are the examples of this mesokaryotic cell. Clear? So this is the today's lecture about the cell. We have started about his discovery of cell, or we can say the history of cell we have studied, the types of cell we have studied, the prokaryotic, eukaryotic and mesokaryotic. Clear? Further tomorrow we will deal with the different components of cell we are studying. Okay.